وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning, Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Good day, everybody. As Syrians prepare for the possibility of returning home from years in diaspora and with elections planned in 4 years, hope is rising for a vibrant and stable Syria. However, significant challenges remain. Many fear that conflicting interests among external and domestic actors, such as the Kurds, Iran, Turkey, Israel, and the US, along with militias reluctant to disarm, may lead to fragmentation. In an effort to delve deeper into these challenges and issues, we have two distinguished guests and experts. We have Mr. Sirwan Kajjo, a Washington-based expert on the Kurdish issue and on the Middle East, among other things. We also have Dr. Ghazoul. Among other things, she is an advisor to the UN Special Envoy to Syria. Before we get started, let me just tell you about a program note. We are coming to you not just on radio, but also on video, on Facebook. If you go to the Facebook page of US Arab Radio, you can see us on Zoom, on video, in person, live. So now we start with a question for both guests. And let's start with Dr. Ghazoul. Who is Ahmed al-Shara? Now, I don't mean to hear the stories that we know about, like he is a leader of the HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. But your impression, any information you gathered about him?
First of all, good morning to your audience and those who are watching us on live TV on Facebook or any social media. And good afternoon for others. Actually, this is an important question. Mr. Ahmed al-Shara now is the president of Syria, or he's doing the job of the president of Syria for this interim stage. In the life of Syria, he is the leader who led the liberation of the country. We can call it the White War, the war that went to its end without bloodshed. And maybe I think the history will record this, and it will be taught in the science of finishing or ending the dictatorship, because the fear of the whole international society of changing the Syrian regime with its allies, needless to speak about the Iranian or Hezbollah or all the fanatic Shiite militia, in addition to Russia, it was impossible for anybody even to imagine that uprooting this regime can be done in this very peaceful way. So yeah, I can say that now he is the leader of Syria. This is Ahmed Ashar.
Okay, Mr. Kajjo, Sirwan Kajjo.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning to your listeners and viewers everywhere. I think this is also, I would say, a very good question, because the new de facto leadership in Syria was, until recently, we didn't have much information about them except what we already knew about Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and its semi quasi-state structure in the Idlib province of northwest Syria. What we do know is that the group is well disciplined. Ahmed al-Shara has been running the show in Idlib for he ran it up until 2024. So 9 years since his group completely took over Idlib. Managed to go through several ideological transformation as he morphed into more of a state-running entity in northwest Syria, which helped him ascend to power in Damascus in December. And I think that's important. What he did, what he has been doing in the past few years in Idlib, informs his state-building skills in for not just for a small portion of Syria, but for the entire country. He comes with a vision of economic development and growth. But it's important for us to remember where he comes from. Ahmed Shara, up until recently, was an affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Syria. For a short period of time, he had connections with ISIS before they broke away and each went their way. And he formed Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which severed ties with both ISIS and Nusra. So it's important to keep that in mind. People do reform, and he himself went through multiple stages of reform on both personal and ideological level for his group. So it will be interesting to see where he leads Syria and the transitional period. Of course, the transitional period has not started yet. What we have in Syria right now is an interim type of governance, de facto, I should say, up until there is a national dialogue conference, which will end up with a consensus on the future of the state, a transitional government for sure, and definitely certain agreements on the constitution and the first democratic elections in the country.
Now that's very important, because it leads me to my next question. Now, you just said that he is not just on top of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but also on other groups that followed him, entered Damascus. Now, my question again for both of you, and let's start with Dr. Ghazoul. For how long will Ahmed al-Shara enjoy support from the groups behind him?
I think you cannot foretell in the future, but until now we can say that, really, he gets all the support, not only from his own group, but also from almost all the Syrian people. And you can see the flood of thousands of Syrians from all over the world to be in Syria. Be it from different, let's say, mentalities, ethnicities, religions, whether they were, in support of Islamic regime or even left side, or those who believe in democracy, or whatever their background is. So they are flooding into Syria. They are willing to help. They are, proposing projects and to rebuild the country. So I believe, as far as they are working in this mentality, the mentality of reconciliation, the mentality of citizenship, the mentality of building the country, the mentality of keeping away revenge and, restoring, let us say, peace in the country. So we are saying that, I believe that everybody is still supporting him. We cannot foretell, but for the time being, this is how I can see the situation.
Mr. Kajjo, for how long will he enjoy support from the groups behind him? Not only that, but also from the rest of Arab countries. There was a recent meeting in which at least most of the Arab countries were muted in their reaction.
Sure. So I think the reason Ahmed Shara was chosen by certain regional powers, some Arab countries for sure, was that his group was highly disciplined and very organized. And I think the reason that he led the offensive, HTS led the offensive from Idlib towards Aleppo, and then for rest of central Syria all the way to Damascus, was that he kept that promise of keeping it peaceful. And for the most part, there wasn't much fighting, not only because the group was disciplined, but also because the regime didn't have the capability to fight back, because they didn't have Russian and Iranian backing. So that's important to keep in mind. Also, the coalition that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was able to forge in the months ahead of the November 27, 2024 was loosely put together. It was led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, but they had several other groups, northern Syria-based rebel groups, some of which were entirely supported by Turkey, but others who had affiliations with the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or were independent from what was going on in northern Syria. But Ahmed Shara and his group was the only one who was able to put it together. And so far, I would say he's largely been successful, like Dr. Ghazoul said, in terms of keeping the peace in many parts of Syria. Now he controls most of the country, unlike Idlib, but he's managed to keep it under control. We've seen some incidents in parts of the coastal region, especially like in Tartus and Latakia, in the Alawite stronghold, and occasional tensions in Sueda and the south, and maybe in Dara. But that's about it. For the most part, the new authorities, the new rulers, have been able to do that. And Arabs and regional countries have been, saying positive things about that. Now, in terms of his durability, how much he can hold well, first of all, I should say he wields significant power within not only within his support base, but outside of support base, because he's seen as a liberator, as someone who was able to remove the dictatorship in Syria. And so that's all good, and he's been saying all the good things, and I think it's important to see what he would do in the next stage. He has positioned himself as a de facto leader. We don't know whether he will run for president, or depending on the shape of the state, whether Syria will be a presidential system or a parliamentary system, how much power and influence he has among groups outside the Arab Sunni base, which gives him most of his political power, reaching out to minorities. And he's done so. He's met with nearly all community leaders and minority group leaders around the country. He's met with Druze, Alawite, Christian leaders throughout the country. He's met also with Kurdish leaders, the SDF in specific. So it's important that he understands that. we don't know. Let's not forget that there are some elements, extremist elements within the coalition that he built, not necessarily on the HTS, even though HTS itself has several extremist elements, mostly foreign fighters from Uyghur, from Xinjiang region in China, Uzbekistan, and many other Arab countries. We don't know how much power these people will have in the future and how much power Shara has over them. I guess future will tell. But for now, he's managed to keep everything under control, both politically and militarily.
We'll take a quick brief break, and then we will resume our discussion when we come back.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics, according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
Michigan's winter forecast is snow, snow, and more snow. And for a little variety, ice. Since that means slippery roads, stay safe by following these driving tips. Don't use cruise control on ice and snow. Use turn signals sooner to give others more time to react. Keep your car's fluids, tires, and wipers well maintained. And most important of all, drive slow on ice and snow. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the situation in Syria, optimism or pessimism. Dr. Ghazoul, are you surprised, like myself, by the absence of the Syrian army as a Shara group and other groups marched onto Damascus? What happened to the Syrian army?
Actually, they put down their weapons and they ran away because they knew that, if their leader is just running out of the country, so definitely, they cannot sustain and they cannot fight for a battle that is not theirs. After the Asitana, treaty that ceased fire in certain areas, and these areas were under the control of Ahmed al-Shara and, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So these areas were under bombardment, airstrikes, missiles, all type of, atrocities during 4 or 5 years. And at the same time, the regime party, the soldiers were doing nothing. The regime used to take soldiers for military service and to put them on the front lines immediately. Those people were really hungry. And when Napoleon was saying that, usually armies crawls on their tummies, these tummies are really empty. They have seen by eyes that, the battle they have led for 10 years and for 13 years was just for the interest of Bashar al-Assad, mainly for the Iranian Number two, for Maher Assad to change the country into a Kiptakun kingdom and to be a source of terrorism all over the world. Those soldiers also are Syrians, and they think that, this is not the country they want. Imagine that when a soldier died in the battle, before the liberation battle, the regime used to send the body with a box of lemon or orange. This is the price of their children. For this reason, they felt that, they are fighting for nothing. And we cannot say that definitely it was no battle at all. No, not really. It's not like that. There were a lot of battles, and Hayat Tahrir Sham and other groups who fought with them lost a lot of fighters. Like in Aleppo, they lost like 600 fighters, thousands of wounded people. In the countryside of Hama, also they led very aggressive battles also in Hamas in certain areas, and they are still, couldn't restore 100% peace at these areas. So we can say that, the leaderships fled away, maybe inside Syria, or they just moved to neighboring countries, and the soldiers put down their weapons and ran away. Where are they? Of course, we are speaking about, tens of thousands. We have seen that in the reconciliation centers, hundreds of thousands of people are going to do this reconciliation and to hand over their weapons. So this is how I can say it, and this is how I can see it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Kajjo, how do you interpret the absence of the Syrian army or the Syrian security force or even the presidential guard?
Right. Well, like Dr. Ghazoul said, for many years, the regime's security apparatus and military have been weakened, due to this conflict. And we're talking about 13 years of internal conflict, which could be very costly on all sides, especially on the regime side, where soldiers didn't see they had a purpose in fighting after so many years. Of course, the regime was able for the first few years to turn the military against the people and turned it into an ideological vehicle to carry out annihilation against the Syrian people. But for all the reasons that Dr. Ghazoul mentioned, they were paid little to nothing. They didn't really have proper clothing, military uniform gear. If you look at footage after, not in the recent battle, but throughout the civil war in recent years, they weren't dressed properly in their military gear. So I think that showed that the entire military establishment was dependent on Russia and Iran for their military gains and inroads throughout the countries, and of course we know it was major battles that were won by foreign actors. For example, Homs and Qusayr back in 2013 and 14, of course, they retook that part of Homs province in Syria due to direct involvement from Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed militia. Same thing with Aleppo in 2015 and 16, of course, when Eastern Aleppo was retaken. It wasn't because of the Syrian regime's military, but it was because of direct Russian air support and, of course, Iranian and Hezbollah involvement on the ground. And for so many years, these areas were controlled by all these Iranian and Russian-backed groups. And the minute that support stopped, because for obvious reasons, Russia was involved with a multi-year conflict in Ukraine, and Iranians were embroiled and preoccupied with their conflict with Israel. Same thing goes to Hezbollah. The regime realized that it didn't have much to fight for. I'm talking about the soldiers on the ground. The minute they realize that there's no command and control in place, the army just melted away. And we saw that. I think Dr. Ghazoul also talked about that. There was little fighting and resistance in parts of Hama province in particular. Other than that, the process of capturing Damascus was for the most part smooth, because there wasn't much fighting. Even like you said, the presidential guard around major palaces and major government institutions in Damascus didn't put up much fight. They literally put down their arms and left. And the way the regime collapsed, the military collapse was an example of how Syrian government institutions had been running for the past more than 13 years. Basically a patchwork of foreign support from Iran and Russia. And like I said, the minute that stopped, the regime wasn't able to continue the fight. So I should also add that regional dynamics had a lot to do with the way the collapse of the Syrian regime happened. If it wasn't for the events in Gaza and Lebanon, and definitely the conflict between Iran and Israel, things would have been completely different in Syria. And I think local actors in Syria and Turkey, to a certain degree, took advantage of that. They used it positively. I don't think initially the aim was to go for Damascus. I think for months, Abu Muhammad Jolani, then Ahmed al-Shara now, was talking about his plans for a battle for Aleppo, to capture Aleppo, but he never mentioned Damascus. In the planning process I'm talking about, I think the first time he seriously talked about retaking Aleppo was back in May, so a few months before the battle in November. But then when we realized how much the regime was weak, I think that a decision was made on the spot to keep going. And every time they went to a major city, so Hama after Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and then every town and city in between, all the way to Damascus, they realized there isn't much resistance. And I think, of course, we don't know how exactly it was executed, but I think that's how it happened. The aim was for Aleppo and for the Turks, and of course the Syrian opposition, to use it as a bargaining chip with the Syrian regime for any future negotiations. But when they realize that there isn't a lot of fighting going on, they continue the march towards Damascus.
Dr. Ghazoul, yes,
please
go
allow
ahead.
me, allow me just to add something about this question. First of all, for our dear guest, my surname is Ghazoul and not Zaghloul. It's okay. And number two, we never had an internal fight in Syria. It was all the way through for 13 years a fight between revolutionists, between the Syrians and the dictatorships. Number two, I mean, I would start from where my colleague just ended. I mean, they planned for this operation more than a year ago. Okay. Hayat Tahrir Sham planned for this operation of liberation more than a year ago. And of course, in advance. And they worked for 4 or 6 months in advance on dismantling the mines around the centers of the Iranian leaderships who were controlling Aleppo. Maybe the first target was Aleppo. And because they announced that they will enter Aleppo maybe 4 months in advance before the liberation, and the regime was prepared all the time through. And every time they announced that, they will attack Aleppo, the regime prepares itself and try to be ready with its soldiers, and then nothing happens. And out of a sudden, they attacked Aleppo. They controlled the centers of the Iranian leaderships and all the regime soldiers and leaders. Some of them ran away, escaped, and they are now in one of the areas at Aleppo city in Sheikh al-Maqsoud. Iranian leaderships, officers of high ranks in the regime area, which raise very big question why there is a sniper that is trying to attack and snipe everybody who would like to be around the area, because they are fighting to bits, not to let those soldiers be hostages or caught by the new leadership in Syria. When you asked about, the situation or the position of the Arab countries adjacent to Syria, allow me to say that, and I am giving you information, not analysis, countries are really very happy. If we say that the whole liberation process was just to stop the flood of Kiptagon to Jordan, to Saudi Arabia, to all the areas of all the countries of the area, or even the world, this is enough. If we say that, they released who is left alive of the prisoners in the slaughters of Assad regime is enough. If it reveals to the whole world the atrocities of the regime and the torture those detainees were under, is enough. So when you look at it from all sides, believe me that the whole international society won the battle against this dictatorship, this brutal regime. I don't believe ever in the world of humanity, in the history of humanity, any regime has done to its people what the Assad regime and his officers, everybody who supported him, have done to the Syrian people. Sorry, but it was really important to clarify these things, and now I'm ready for your question.
We're going to take another quick commercial break.
Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
Behind the scenes, Michigan's public health team is working to make Michiganders across the state healthier, bringing healthcare closer to home with mobile clinics, increasing access to healthy food through farmers markets and WIC, doing hearing and vision screenings in schools, helping families navigate healthcare challenges. Learn more about how public health workers protect us all at michigan.gov/public health. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We're discussing the situation in Syria, optimism or pessimism. Mr. Kajjo, which country had the strongest role in the fall of Bashar al-Assad?
There is no question that Turkey led the efforts to, the battle for Damascus initially, and we all remember Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan multiple times said that the situation in Syria needs to be addressed. This is when the battle for Aleppo started back in November 27th. So, but when Turkey realized there is a momentum going on, slowly they take credit for that, and they did play a major role. Their key role was making sure that Turkish-backed groups within the coalition were in line with what Ahmed al-Shara and HTS were doing on the ground, and for the most part they succeeded in doing so. So Turkey definitely with backing from some regional countries, and I would say there are other factors that led to this, but as an entity, as a regional power, I think Turkey is the one that put things in motion, and now we see the first foreign delegation that arrived in Damascus immediately after the fall of the former regime was the Turkish intelligence head of the Turkish and also the foreign ministry, and other Turkish delegations have been there. Turkey genuinely wants to play a much bigger role in Syria's future. I'm not talking only about the political and military matters, but I'm also talking about economic development, investment, and definitely how Syria will look as a state, because Turkey has a lot of stakes in it, including their concerns about the Kurdish region.
Dr. Ghazoul, Syrians are traditionally known to be among the most secular people in the region. Will they Dr. Ghazoul?
Sorry, yes, please go ahead, continue your question. Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, the question is, Syrians are traditionally known to be among the most secular people in the Middle East. Will they dictate moderation?
Well, this is a critical question. I think, you always would like to be who you are. We didn't fight for democracy for 14 years. We didn't leave our country to be refugees in any country of the world, or even to be talented people working outside our country for any liberator to change our mentality, our ideology, our what we believe in. Yes, they are secular people, but at the same time, Syria in general is a conservative society. Be it Muslim, be it Christian, be it of any religion or any ethnicity or any sect. So I wouldn't worry. The leadership in Damascus is saying that, we are looking for the country of citizenship. It is not based on religion. It is not based on ideology. It is not based on ethnicity. And this is what we look for. Definitely, we learned a lot from our experience in exile, and also millions of Syrian people have learned a lot from the democracies that they lived in. We would like, the parties to be allowed in Syria. So we'll be supporter of the Syrian voices to achieve the best for our country or for our people. So I wouldn't worry at all.
Yes, Mr. Kajjo, why didn't Russia intervene to help Bashar al-Assad remain in power, like several times before they did? Why this time they just took a muted position?
Yeah, I think Russia realized that Assad was no longer a reliable partner. For so many years, the regime was supported directly by Russian air support, but also on the ground, of course, Russia fortified the regime strongholds throughout the country. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, Russia has been preoccupied with this conflict in Ukraine. So Russia doesn't have the same resources and capacity that it lended the regime back in 2015. That's one. Two, Russia realized that a change in hands in Damascus and Syria as a whole doesn't necessarily mean that Russia will never have access to Syria or will never have influence in Syria. Of course, at this point, it's debatable because we don't know how the future relationship between Syria and Russia would look like. But at least Russia realized that its strategic objectives in the Eastern Mediterranean would not be entirely threatened if there was a regime change in Damascus. And I think the new authorities, Ahmed al-Sharia and his coalition, have been sending the right messages to Russia that, we're not going to sever ties with you, where Russia will have presence, not necessarily a military presence, but Russia will have, involvement in future Syria. I mean, and like any other state, like you can't just sever ties with one state and pretend that it doesn't exist. I think the logic is that Russia should be, like any other region, an international actor, be reached out to in the future. Of course, there are political calculations and certain circumstances that wouldn't allow Russia to be back in Syria the way it was welcomed during the Assad era. But I think that's the rationale behind Russia's decision not to support Assad this time around. They also realized regional dynamics and changes that have been shaping a new Middle East, and Russia didn't want to be seen as a disruptor, realizing that Assad for the past few years has been nothing but a machine to produce drugs such as Captagon and other illicit trades that threatened not only the regional dynamics, especially in the Gulf, but also global dynamics after the seizure of a large shipment of Captagon towards Europe. So even the Russian realized that the regime was no longer a stabilizing force as those Putin and others in Moscow for a long time believed to be. And I think that's what led their decision to kind of give up on Assad.
Dr. Ghazoul, what's going to happen to Russian bases in Syria in the warm waters? Your prediction?
Thank you. Actually, I would like to add something to what my colleague has just said. I
Sure.
believe that, the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, is that when Russia tried to normalize the relationship between the regime and the Arab countries, and we have seen that, Assad walked on the red carpets in Saudi Arabia, and also finally with Turkey. And we have noticed that, Erdogan put preconditions for this normalization. And then he said, nothing for the preconditions. And then Assad also refused. Needless to speak about the decision of Biden to allow Ukraine to use a type of weapons that have been prohibited for Ukraine to use again in the war against Russia. And Russia faced the bloodiest 3 days, you see. So Russia wasn't in that powerful position, neither to sponsor the war for Assad, and they have seen by eyes that the war they have fought for this regime has changed the country into the Captagon Kingdom. It was the country of the Iranian. It was the country that has no shape, no significance at all for a future of a country. And when Aleppo collapsed that easily, Russia felt, she cannot fight on the behalf of the Syrian regime. The same thing happened with Iran. When Assad went to Iran, this is what he heard from the Iranian leadership, that they said, if your soldiers cannot fight for their own land, we cannot send our soldiers to fight on your behalf. And also the war in Gaza, the war against Hezbollah, all these factors played a very decisive role behind even the decision of Russia not to fight and to stand by the regime, neither financially nor economically. Now, please, return back to your question, which was, sorry.
Yeah, will Russia keeps its bases in Syria in the warm water?
Yes, actually, I believe that, Mr. Al-Shara and the leadership asked Russia, to evacuate the bases. Of course, Russia is still, one of the biggest power in the world. It's one of the two poles of the world. And we want a relationship that is based on mutual interest, not on subjugation and, occupation. So this is our own land, our own sea, our own bases. I believe that, the new government should consider all the treaties that the regime has signed with any other country. Yeah, they asked them to leave, to evacuate.
We'll take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the future of the Kurds after the break.
حادث سيارة، إصابة شخصية، لا تدع حقوقك تضيع. المحامية جمانة كيروز المتخصصة في حوادث السيارات والإصابات الشخصية تقف معك حتى تحصل على حقوقك التي تستحقها. $1,150,000 $900,000 $775,000 $700,000 $540,000 $395,000. ومؤخرا حصلت على تسوية بقيمة $3 مليون ونصف. اتصل الآن ودع جمانة كيروز تحقق العدالة التي تستحقها. الاستشارة مجانية 248-557-3645. That's 248-557-3645. جمانة كيروز، اسم تثق به لتحصل على حقك كاملا.
As the weather gets colder, it's a good idea to layer up with scarves, hats, and mittens. Another layer of protection this season is to get your flu and COVID-19 vaccines. You can get both vaccines at the same time. Talk to your healthcare provider or learn more at michigan.gov/COVID-flu-RSV and layer up for some added peace of mind. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
I am Atif Abdel Jawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the situation in Syria, optimism versus pessimism. Mr. Kajjo, you believe that Mr. Erdogan of Turkey pre-planned the whole events. So what future will the Kurds have?
Thank you for this question. Kurds are the second largest ethnic group in Syria after the Arabs. So it's important to keep that in mind for any, future negotiations between the Kurds and Damascus. What the Kurds really want in Syria is to be respected as equal citizens for their language, for them to be allowed allow to learn and teach their language and to participate in political life equally to other with other citizens. I think this is one of the misperceptions about the Kurdish situation in Syria is that, and unfortunately, it's a narrative that has been supported by the Turkish government, that Kurds are separatists, that Kurds want to, take part of Syria and create their own statelet, which is not true. None of the Syrian Kurdish parties that have been, by the way, have been active since 1957. That's when the first Syrian Kurdish party was established. None of them, in their political literature, advocates for secession from Syria. And even now, at the peak of the conflict in Syria, the Syrian Democratic Forces and other armed elements in the Kurdish region, none of them advocated for any sort of separation. What the Kurds have really wanted is okay, we tried centralization for centuries, especially under the Ba'ath regime, both the father and Hafiz, the father, and the son Bashar. Centralization proven to be ineffective. If anything, it was one of the reasons that led to the Syrian uprising. Let's try something else. Let's try a different form of governance, something that all components, all groups, ethnic and religious, can participate in running their affairs. And I think this is something that eventually Syrians in other parts of the country will have to agree on, because it serves the local interests and the national interest of the country. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from a city near Qamishli, and if I have a governor coming from, say, Latakia or Daraa or any other part of Syria that is remotely detached from my own reality, I wouldn't be happy as much as when there is a local governor running the show in my town. It's simple as that. It's about how you can use localized power in order to empower your own citizens. And I think this will be the most important debate when it comes to drafting the country's constitution in the next few months and years, and also the shape of the country as a whole. Do we need a Syria similar to what we experienced, just one of the most brutal chapters of Syrian history under the Ba'ath and the Assads? Or do we need a participatory system where all components of society chip in and participate and be part of public life? And I think that's the conversation that people should have, not that Kurds are separatist or not. And I think that's, like I said, that's a narrative that the Turkish government, unfortunately, with many Syrians subscribing to the same, that without really understanding the root causes of the Kurdish problem in Syria, major problems like Kurds have, never enjoyed the right to learn and use their language in schools and public life in general, and the right to elect their local officials, things like that. That, by the way, Syrians in other parts of the country take it for granted. I had to, growing up, I had to learn Arabic, and my Arabic didn't improve until I was, late in elementary school. I didn't speak any Arabic until that. So that was one of the problems that people in Syria and other parts of Syria don't really realize, because they didn't have to go through that. Of course, the same goes for other ethnic minorities in Syria that whose rights were suppressed by a singular unitary centralized system that only recognized Syria as one group of people, as opposed to a very diverse of people. And the beauty of Syria and the strength of Syria comes from its religious and ethnic diversity. So I think that's one conversation that we will have to continue to have in the future if we're looking for a country for all of its citizens.
Dr. Ghazoul, briefly, please. Israel moved quickly to take a chunk of Syria. Was that move part of the overall plan?
Definitely we are all agitated and angry of what Israel has done, as if, the ceasefire treaty that has been signed in 1974 has been signed with Assad family and not with the Syrian country. So they are claiming that they are going to withdraw, but just they want to see the beginning of the transitional government to make sure that their country they will restore peace and there will be no unhappy surprises. Because they still believe that there are, and maybe they are right, they are still, parties or fractions from Hezbollah or from the Iranian or from any, fanatic group that might attack Israel using the Syrian borders. So definitely this is unjustified and we cannot explain what's happening. We are depending also on the international societies and on the government efforts by negotiation to ask Israel to withdraw. And I wholeheartedly support what my colleague has said concerning the Kurds. They are part of the Syrian people. Citizenship will guarantee the rights of everybody. So no need, to worry. We are looking for the country of citizenship where peace can be restored, where democracy can spread, where building the country can happen, and also the all the ethnicities, whether be it Syrian or Kurds, can even study with their own language in the areas of the majority of those ethnicities. It is their own right, and definitely this will enrich our heritage, our background, and of course, it will portray who is Syria and who are the Syrian people.
Mr. Kajjo, the U.S. handed Afghanistan over to the Taliban. Now it takes a muted position in Syria. Is that the new trend? Let Islamist fanatics rule the Middle East.
I think the U.S. is more involved than we think it is. A delegation from the State Department traveled to Syria a few days after the collapse of the Assad regime and met with Ahmed al-Shara and other officials in the interim government. Barbara Leaf, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, managed to stay in Syria for some time and meet with different actors on the ground. And I think as we speak, there is a semi-permanent delegation from the State Department in the Four Seasons Hotel in Damascus, where they meet with different actors. So I think the United States is more involved politically and diplomatically in the affairs of what's happening in Syria. Now, there's a new administration in America, and we all know what President Trump has said about the situation in Syria. We don't know how would that look like, but judging by statements from his new staff, like Trump team, for example, Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, yesterday had a phone call with his Turkish counterpart, Hakan Fidan, where he talked extensively about Syria and talked about the importance of keeping a smooth transition in Syria and managing things in a way that where Syria doesn't become a global hub for regional hub for regional terrorism and other destabilizing factors. So I think the United States will have to remain engaged in Syria if we don't want a repetition of events in Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's not forget that the United States right now has nearly 2,000 forces in parts of northeast Syria that are part of the anti-ISIS mission. I believe those forces will play a key role in towards peace building in Syria. They were there for the mission of defeating ISIS, even though ISIS still poses a great threat to the security of Syria, security and stability of Syria and neighboring countries, and also global peace. I also believe that these forces can play a role in bringing the Syrians together. It can be used as a positive leverage to bring the opposing sides, especially, well, I wouldn't even call it opposing sides, since they're also already meeting the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, and the new authorities in Damascus. There was a meeting between Mazloum Abdi, the general commander of SDF, IDF, and Ahmed al-Shara, the new leader, and they've been discussing how to manage these internal problems.
Thank you, Mr. Sirwan Kajjo. Thank you very much for your contribution. Also, thank you goes to Dr. Nahid Ghazoul. And ladies and gentlemen, I will see you again here the first Friday next month.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting us. Thank you.